Let me tell you about Princess Zara of the Vortavian Empire, a woman so terrifyingly competent at violence that entire star systems would cross to the other side of the galaxy just to avoid making eye contact. Picture this: 7 feet of pure alien muscle, wrapped in ceremonial armor that had seen more blood than a vampire's dinner napkin, with 4 arms that could punch you into next Tuesday while simultaneously filing her nails and checking her space phone for messages. Zara had what you might generously call a hobby. She collected victories the way some people collect stamps. Except her stamps were the broken dreams and shattered egos of every warrior foolish enough to challenge her. The royal trophy room had run out of space 3 expansions ago, and the cleaning staff had unionized specifically because of the bloodstain workload. Her father, King Thorek, was getting desperate. Not the kind of desperate where you eat cereal for dinner 2 nights in a row, but the kind where you realize your daughter is 32, has the social skills of a particularly antisocial brick, and her idea of romance involves seeing how many ways she can dislocate someone's joints. "My dear daughter," the king said during their weekly breakfast meeting, which was really more of a diplomatic negotiation at this point, "perhaps it's time we considered your matrimonial future." Zara looked up from her meal, which appeared to be some kind of still-twitching creature that had definitely not gone quietly into that good night. "Father, we've discussed this. I'll marry when I find someone worthy, someone who can actually challenge me." "But darling, you've defeated everyone. The Galactic Combat League has officially retired your division because they ran out of opponents. The insurance companies won't even cover fights with you anymore." King Thorak rubbed his temples with all 4 of his hands, a sure sign that he was approaching maximum parental stress levels. "What if we made it official? A tournament? Winner gets your hand in marriage?" This was when Zara did something that would echo across the galaxy for months to come. She laughed. Not a polite chuckle or a diplomatic titter, but a full-blown, tears streaming down her face, double-over belly laugh that shook the crystalware and caused 3 servants to drop their trays in terror. "Oh, father," she gasped between fits of laughter, "that's precious. I'll marry anyone who beats me." "Anyone?" She wiped her eyes with the back of one of her massive hands. "Sure, why not? Let's make it official. I, Princess Zara of Vortania, will marry whoever can defeat me in single combat." The king immediately regretted every life choice that had led to this moment. Within hours, the announcement had spread across the galactic communication networks faster than a computer virus in a Windows 95 convention. The response was immediate and overwhelming, which was surprising considering Zara's reputation preceded her like a tsunami of bad news. Just last month, she'd defeated Kraken the Destroyer in what was supposed to be an exhibition match. Kraken the Destroyer, whose name was not ironic, who had single-handedly conquered 14 solar systems before lunch. The fight lasted exactly 37 seconds, and 25 of those were Zara taking off her jewelry so she wouldn't scratch it. Before that, there was her legendary victory over the Cyber Gladiator Unit X9, a machine literally designed to be the perfect warrior. It had analyzed every fighting style in the known universe, calculated probability matrices for every possible combat scenario, and could process tactical information faster than most organic beings could blink. Zara had beaten it by doing something so unpredictable that its circuits literally couldn't compute it. She'd gotten bored halfway through the fight and started using only her left pinky finger. The tournament was set for 3 months from the announcement, giving potential suitors time to travel to Vortania and, presumably, make peace with their gods. The prize wasn't just Princess Zara's hand in marriage, but also a claim to the Vortanian throne, control over the largest military fleet in the galaxy, and access to the royal treasury, which contained enough wealth to buy several small galaxies. It was, as they say in the business, quite the incentive package. Princess Zara spent those 3 months in what could generously be called preparation, but was really more like elaborate ways to show off. She practiced her combat forms in the palace courtyard, each movement so precise and deadly that the garden flowers wilted in sympathy. She updated her will, not because she expected to lose, but because she wanted to make sure her victory trophy collection went to someone who would properly appreciate the craftsmanship of a well-crushed skull. The king, meanwhile, spent those same 3 months stress-eating and wondering if it was too late to adopt a nice normal daughter, who maybe wanted to be an accountant, or something equally non-violent. As the tournament date approached, applications flooded in from across the galaxy: warriors, champions, knights, soldiers of fortune, and at least one guy who seemed to think this was some kind of dating show, and kept asking about the catering arrangements. Princess Zara read through each application with the kind of grim satisfaction usually reserved for tax collectors and people who spoil movie endings. She wasn't worried. She'd never been worried. Worry was for people who occasionally lost fights. She had no idea that somewhere in the backwater solar system humans called home, a very ordinary man named Jake Morrison was about to have the worst case of wrong place, wrong time in galactic history. Tournament day arrived with all the pomp and circumstance of a royal wedding crossed with a gladiator match, which, when you think about it, was exactly what it was. The Vortanian Colosseum had been decorated with banners from every major civilization, partly for diplomacy, and partly because someone in event planning had gotten really carried away with the whole galactic unity theme. The first contestant to make his dramatic entrance was Krex the Eighth Armed, and boy did he want everyone to know about those arms. He strutted into the arena like he was auditioning for a bodybuilding competition, flexing all 8 appendages in a synchronized routine that was honestly more impressive as choreography than intimidation. Krex hailed from the Octarian system, where apparently subtlety had gone extinct sometime during their industrial revolution. "Behold!" Krex announced to the crowd, his voice carrying across the stadium through strategically placed amplifiers. "I am Krex the 8A Armed, champion of 7 worlds, master of the deadly art of Octo-Fu." He proceeded to demonstrate this by shadowboxing with himself, which looked less like martial arts and more like he was having an argument with his own limbs. Princess Zara watched from her viewing platform with the expression of someone watching paint dry in slow motion. 8 arms, she mused aloud. That just means 8 different ways I can break him. The fight lasted roughly as long as it takes to make a decent cup of coffee. Krex came at her with all 8 arms flailing in what he probably thought was an unstoppable whirlwind of destruction. Zara caught 4 of his hands, used them to tie the other 4 into a knot, and then gently tapped him on the forehead. Krex toppled backward like a very complicated tree and stayed down, mostly out of confusion. Next up was General Vaxon of the Stellar Military Command, a being who had read every military strategy book ever written and apparently thought that made him qualified for hand-to-hand combat. He marched into the arena with the confidence of someone who had spent his entire career telling other people to do the fighting while he stood safely behind a command console. "Princess Zara," he declared, consulting what appeared to be a small tablet, "I have analyzed your previous 17 combat encounters and identified 14 distinct weaknesses in your technique." "Oh, really?" Zara asked, genuinely curious despite herself. "What's weakness number 1? You have a slight tendency to favor your upper left arm in defensive maneuvers, creating a gap in your guard that can be exploited by a calculated strike to your lower right quadrant." "Fascinating," Zara replied. "Would you like to demonstrate?" General Vaxon consulted his tablet again. "According to my calculations, if I execute a 3-point flanking maneuver while simultaneously creating a diversionary feint, I should be able to achieve victory in approximately 4 minutes and 37 seconds. What he actually achieved was a very close personal relationship with the arena floor in approximately 4 seconds, which was still 33 seconds longer than his calculations had predicted he would remain conscious. The third contestant was perhaps the most tragic of all. Zephyr the Untouchable had gotten his name from the unfortunate fact that his skin secreted a toxin so potent that physical contact with him was generally fatal to most species. This made him technically unbeatable in hand-to-hand combat, but also meant he had never actually touched another living being in his entire adult life. "Finally," he announced dramatically, "I shall face an opponent who cannot simply overwhelm me with brute force, for I am untouchable, literally and metaphorically." Zara looked at him thoughtfully. "You know, that's actually a pretty good gimmick. I'm genuinely curious how this is going to work." Zephyr began his attack, which consisted mainly of trying to grab Zara with his poison-coated hands while she danced just out of reach. It was like watching the world's deadliest game of tag, if tag involved potentially fatal neurotoxins. After about 30 seconds of this elaborate chase scene, Zara picked up a small decorative rock from the arena landscaping and tossed it at Zephyr's head. He went down like a sack of toxic potatoes. "Turns out," Zara announced to the crowd, "being untouchable doesn't help much against projectiles. Who knew?" The crowd's enthusiasm, which had started at a solid 7 out of 10, was now hovering somewhere around a 3 and dropping fast. They had come expecting epic battles of legendary warriors, and instead they were watching what amounted to a very violent educational seminar on the difference between reputation and actual combat ability. King Thorak watched from the royal box with the expression of a man watching his retirement savings get shredded in a blender. Each quick victory brought him closer to the terrible realization that this tournament was going to end exactly the way every other challenge to his daughter had ended, with Zara still single, still undefeated, and still eating creatures that fought back during breakfast. By the time the 4th, 5th, and 6th contestants had been systematically dismantled, the crowd had moved beyond disappointment into a kind of morbid fascination. It was like watching a nature documentary about apex predators, except the apex predator was his daughter, and the prey were the supposed greatest warriors in the galaxy. The betting pools had stopped taking wagers against Zara entirely. Even the bookmakers weren't stupid enough to lose money on that kind of certainty. Princess Zara, meanwhile, was getting visibly bored. She had started adding unnecessary flourishes to her victories, not to show off, but just to keep herself entertained. The 7th contestant got defeated with what appeared to be interpretive dance. The 8th was taken down using only her tail. By the 9th contestant, she was literally yawning between victories. "Is this it?" she called out to the crowd. "Is this really the best the galaxy has to offer? Because honestly, I'm starting to think I should have just put up a dating profile instead." That's when Jake Morrison stumbled through the arena's main entrance, looking like he had been having a really bad day. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was doing that thing where it sticks up in 17 different directions, despite all attempts at civilization. And he had the general appearance of someone who had been traveling through space for 3 weeks without proper access to laundry facilities. Which, as it turned out, was exactly what had happened. Jake had been working as a maintenance technician on a deep space cargo hauler when a series of unfortunate events involving a broken navigation computer, a miscalibrated hyperdrive, and what he was pretty sure had been an illegal left turn at the Proxima Centauri checkpoint had resulted in his ship making an unscheduled landing on Vortania. He walked into the Colosseum because he had been following signs that he thought said information, but actually said registration in Galactic Standard, a language he didn't speak but had assumed was probably like Spanish, where you could fake your way through most conversations if you nodded confidently enough. "Excuse me," Jake said to the first official-looking person he saw, which happened to be the tournament master of ceremonies. "I'm really sorry to bother you, but I think I took a wrong turn somewhere around Jupiter, and now my GPS is just showing question marks. Could you maybe point me toward the nearest embassy or possibly a really good mechanic?" The tournament master looked down at this strange bipedal creature with only 2 arms, no visible natural weapons, and what appeared to be a T-shirt advertising something called Dave's Discount Auto Parts. The alien's expression suggested he was trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces were missing and the other half were on fire. "Are you," the tournament master asked slowly, "here for the tournament?" Jake looked around at the massive arena, the cheering crowd, the elaborate decorations, and the unconscious bodies of various aliens being carted away on stretchers. "Is this some kind of Comic-Con thing? Because I've got to say, you guys really commit to the bit. That makeup work is incredible." "Makeup," the tournament master repeated flatly. "Yeah, I mean, look at that." Jake pointed toward Princess Zara, who was currently standing in the center of the arena looking like she could bench press a small moon. 4 arms! That's some serious prosthetic work right there. And the height difference. You must have one heck of a special effects budget. The crowd had gone completely silent. 20,000 beings from across the galaxy were staring at this small, unremarkable creature who apparently thought he was at some kind of elaborate costume party. Princess Zara, meanwhile, was experiencing something she hadn't felt in years: curiosity. Here was a being so utterly, completely unimpressed by her reputation that he thought she was wearing a costume. She wasn't sure if she should be insulted or fascinated. "Human," she called out, her voice carrying easily across the arena. "Are you here to challenge me?" Jake looked up at her and waved in what he probably thought was a friendly manner. "Oh, hey there, nice costume. I'm not really here for whatever this is, I'm just looking for directions, but thanks for asking." "Human," Zara repeated, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Do you know who I am?" Jake squinted up at her. "Someone who's really into Renaissance fair stuff? Look, I don't want to be rude, but I'm kind of having a day here. My ship is broken, I'm about 97% sure I'm lost, and I've got maybe 12 credits to my name until I can figure out how to call my insurance company." The crowd was now murmuring among themselves in dozens of different languages, all of them expressing roughly the same sentiment. Is this guy serious? King Thoric leaned forward in his royal box, suddenly very interested. "Daughter," he called down, "perhaps you should explain the situation to our unexpected visitor." "The situation," Zara announced, projecting her voice so everyone could hear, "is that I am Princess Zara of Vortania, undefeated champion of the galaxy, and I will marry whoever can defeat me in single combat." Jake processed this information with the expression of someone trying to solve calculus while riding a roller coaster. "Okay, so this is like a dating show meets WWE. Got it. That's actually pretty creative." He paused. "Wait, did you say marry? Like legally binding marriage?" "Indeed. And there's probably money involved, right? Like royal family money?" "The winner receives my hand, a claim to the throne, and control of the Vortanian treasury." Jake did some quick mental math, which mostly involved trying to figure out how many zeros were in control of a galactic treasury, and whether that would be enough to get his ship fixed, and maybe buy him a decent sandwich. "You know what?" he said finally. "I'm having a really weird month anyway. Sure, why not? Sign me up." The tournament master looked like he was having some kind of existential crisis. "Sir, I feel obligated to point out that the princess has defeated every challenger. Many of them were legendary warriors. The last contestant was carried away in 3 separate pieces." "Well," Jake replied with a kind of cheerful optimism that comes from being too tired to properly process danger, "I guess somebody's got to be first, right?" Princess Zara's smile widened. Finally, someone with either incredible courage or incredible stupidity. At this point, she honestly wasn't sure which would be more entertaining. "Very well, human, what is your name?" Jake Morrison. "And just so we're clear, when you say defeat you, we're talking about like arm wrestling or something, right? Because I should probably mention that I've never actually been in a real fight. I mean, there was that thing with my neighbor about the hedge trimming, but that was more of a strongly worded conversation than actual combat." The silence in the arena was so complete you could have heard a pin drop, if pins made sound when they fell in vacuum-sealed alien atmospheres. Princess Zara looked down at Jake Morrison, this small, confused, utterly ordinary human who thought he was at a costume party and was apparently willing to risk his life for gas money. "Oh," she said softly, "this is going to be fun." The arena had been cleared of debris from the previous matches, which was a polite way of saying they had mopped up the blood and removed the unconscious bodies. Jake stood in the center of what was essentially a gladiatorial death pit, still looking around like he was waiting for someone to explain the rules of whatever game show he thought he had wandered into. Princess Zara descended from her platform with the fluid grace of a predator who had never encountered anything that could be considered prey. Each step was calculated, precise, designed to demonstrate the kind of controlled power that made smart people reconsider their life choices. Jake, meanwhile, was checking his pockets for his phone, apparently under the impression that he might be able to call an Uber to get out of this situation. "Before we begin," Zara announced, her voice carrying the kind of authority that had made entire armies surrender without firing a shot, "I should probably warn you that I have never lost a fight, not once, not ever." That's nice, Jake replied absently, still patting down his jacket. I'm pretty sure I've never won one, so we're like perfect opposites or something. He looked up at her with genuine curiosity. Hey, quick question. Is there like a safe word for this thing? Because I'm starting to get the feeling that this might be more serious than I thought. Zara blinked slowly, processing this information. In her entire adult life, no one had ever asked her about a safe word before combat. Most of her opponents spent their pre-fight time making dramatic speeches about honor and glory and how they would be remembered forever. Jake was apparently more concerned about establishing proper emergency protocols. Human, there is no safe word. This is combat to submission or unconsciousness. Oh. Jake considered this for a moment. Well, that seems unnecessarily dramatic, but okay. I guess we're doing this. He took off his jacket and handed it to the nearest arena attendant. Could you maybe hold this? It's the only clean shirt I have left. This was when Princess Zara made her first tactical error. She decided to be sporting about it. Since you are clearly inexperienced, she announced to the crowd, I will give you the first move. Jake looked around the arena like he was trying to spot hidden cameras. The first move of what exactly? Combat, human. Attack me. Attack you? Jake's eyebrows went up so high they nearly left his forehead entirely. Lady, I don't hit women. My mom raised me better than that. The crowd made a collective noise that sounded like 20,000 beings trying not to laugh and failing spectacularly. Here was Princess Zara, terror of 7 star systems, being lectured about manners by a creature that looked like it might lose a fight with a particularly aggressive houseplant. I am a warrior, Zara said, her patience beginning to show the first hairline cracks. I am challenging you to honorable combat. Right, but you're also like 7 feet tall and have 4 arms. That doesn't seem very fair. Fair? Zara repeated the word, like she was trying to translate it from a dead language. Yeah, you know, sporting. Even playing field. David had a slingshot when he fought Goliath, right? And that's when Jake did something that would be talked about in military academies for the next century. He started looking around the arena for improvised weapons, not because he was a tactical genius, but because he genuinely believed in fairness and thought he should probably have something to even the odds. Aha! He picked up a small, decorative banner that had fallen from the stands. This'll work. Princess Zara watched with the fascination of a scientist observing a new species, as Jake Morrison, maintenance technician from Earth, prepared to face her in combat, armed with what appeared to be a souvenir pennant from the Galactic Tourism Board. Human, she said slowly, that is a flag. It's got a stick on it, Jake replied reasonably. That makes it basically a spear, right? This was Princess Zara's second tactical error. Instead of ending this farce immediately, she decided she was curious to see what would happen next. It had been so long since anyone had surprised her that she was willing to let this play out, just for the entertainment value. Very well, she said, settling into a combat stance that had been perfected over decades of warfare. Let us begin. Jake held his flag spear in what he probably thought was a threatening manner, but actually looked more like he was about to lead a very small parade. Okay, but just so we're clear, when I lose, and let's be honest, I'm definitely going to lose, you'll help me find a mechanic, right? Princess Zara charged. What happened next would be debated by military historians for generations. Zara came at Jake with a 4-armed combination strike that should have ended the fight before he even realized it had started. Jake, seeing this 7-foot alien warrior bearing down on him with murder in her eyes, did what any sensible person would do. He panicked. Jake threw himself sideways, not in any kind of tactical maneuver, but in the universal human response to imminent death known as, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. He hit the ground, rolled, and somehow ended up behind a decorative pillar that he hadn't even noticed was there. Zara's charge carried her past his previous position, and she spun around to face him with the fluid grace of a trained killer. Jake peeked out from behind the pillar like he was playing the world's most dangerous game of hide-and-seek. Okay, he called out. I'm starting to think this might not be arm wrestling. Zara launched herself at the pillar, and Jake did the only thing he could think of. He ran. Not strategically, not tactically, just pure, animal brain terror, driving him in whatever direction seemed to have the least amount of angry alien princess in it. The crowd was now fully invested in what had become less of a combat tournament and more of a comedy routine. Jake sprinted around the arena perimeter, occasionally swinging his flag at Zara when she got too close, usually while yelling things like, "I'm sorry," and "This is probably illegal in most civilizations." Princess Zara, meanwhile, was discovering something that no amount of combat training had prepared her for. Fighting someone who had absolutely no idea what they were doing was incredibly difficult. Every technique she had mastered was designed to counter specific attacks, defensive postures, and tactical approaches. Jake wasn't using any of those. Jake was using the ancient human martial art of run around screaming until something good happens. After 5 minutes of chasing Jake around the arena, Zara was beginning to feel something she hadn't experienced in years. Frustration. Not the mild annoyance of dealing with incompetent opponents, but actual, genuine frustration at being unable to catch someone who appeared to be powered entirely by terror and caffeine withdrawal. "Human!" she shouted as Jake dove behind another decorative element. "Stand and fight!" "I am fighting," Jake yelled back. "This is what human fighting looks like. We call it tactical retreating." "That's not tactical, that's just running." "Hey, it's working, isn't it?" And, Princess Zara realized with growing amazement, it actually was. By the 10-minute mark, something unprecedented was happening in the Vortanian Colosseum. Princess Zara, undefeated champion of the galaxy, was breathing hard. Not from exertion, she could fight for hours without breaking a sweat, but from sheer, unbridled frustration at being unable to catch someone whose entire strategy appeared to be, avoid the scary lady with 4 arms. Jake, meanwhile, had discovered that pure terror was an excellent cardio workout. He had also discovered that the arena had been designed by someone with a real appreciation for decorative architecture, because there were pillars, banners, ornamental fountains, and various other obstacles that he was becoming intimately familiar with as he dove behind them in increasingly creative ways. "This is ridiculous," Zara shouted as Jake slithered under a bench like some kind of panicked snake. "You cannot win by running forever." "I'm not trying to win," Jake called back, popping up from behind a statue of what appeared to be a very stern-looking alien holding a sword. "I'm trying not to die. There's a difference." That's when Jake's phone, which had been sitting in his jacket pocket, started ringing. The jacket he had handed to the arena attendant, who was standing approximately 20 feet away from his current hiding spot. Jake looked at his jacket. He looked at Princess Zara, who was currently trying to figure out the geometric angles required to corner him using advanced military tactics. He looked back at his jacket. "Oh, come on," he muttered to himself. "That's probably my insurance company calling me back." What Jake did next would be taught in military academies as either the most brilliant tactical maneuver in galactic history or the luckiest accident since someone discovered penicillin. He made a run for his jacket. Princess Zara saw him break cover and sprint across open ground toward what appeared to be a completely arbitrary target. Finally, she thought, he's made a mistake. She calculated the intercept angle, anticipated his trajectory, and launched herself in a perfect diving tackle that should have ended the fight decisively. Jake, reaching his jacket, bent down to fish his phone out of the pocket. Princess Zara sailed over him like a very large, very angry missile and crashed face first into the arena wall with a sound like a small meteor hitting a parking garage. The Colosseum went completely silent. Jake straightened up, phone in hand, and looked around at the sudden quiet. Princess Zara was sitting on the ground, looking dazed and confused, with a small trickle of blue blood running from her nose. Behind her, there was a princess-shaped crack in the supposedly indestructible arena wall. "Hello?" Jake answered his phone. "Oh, hi, Mom. Yeah, I'm fine. Just having some car trouble. Well, spaceship trouble, technically. No, I'm not in jail yet. Look, can I call you back? I think I'm in the middle of something important." He hung up and looked down at Princess Zara, who was shaking her head like she was trying to clear cobwebs. "Oh, crap. Are you okay? I'm really sorry about that. I didn't mean to. Whatever just happened there." The tournament master of ceremonies was staring at the scene with the expression of someone whose understanding of the universe had just been turned inside out and used as a decorative centerpiece. He looked at his official rule book, flipped through several pages, and then looked back at the arena, where the most feared warrior in the galaxy was sitting in a pile of rubble, while a human apologized for accidentally making her crash into a wall. The tournament master said slowly, "I believe we have a winner." The crowd erupted. Not in cheers exactly, but in the kind of confused, amazed noise that 20,000 beings make when they witness something that probably shouldn't be possible, but definitely just happened. Princess Zara sat there for a moment, processing the fact that she had just been defeated by someone who had accidentally ducked at exactly the right moment while trying to answer his phone. She touched her nose, looked at the blue blood on her fingers, and started to laugh. Not the cruel, mocking laugh from when her father had first suggested the tournament, but genuine, delighted laughter. For the first time in her adult life, someone had surprised her. Someone had done something so completely unpredictable that even her combat-trained reflexes couldn't adapt to it. "You," she said, looking up at Jake from her position on the ground, "have got to be the luckiest idiot in the galaxy." "I prefer maintenance technician," Jake replied, offering her a hand up. "But yeah, I'll take lucky idiot as a close second." Zara stared at his outstretched hand for a moment. When was the last time someone had offered to help her up? When was the last time someone had shown her simple kindness without wanting something in return? She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. "So," Jake said, apparently still not fully grasping the magnitude of what had just happened, "does this mean you can help me find that mechanic now?" King Thoric was leaning so far forward in his royal box that he was in danger of falling out entirely. "Daughter," he called down, are you all right?" "I'm perfect, father," Zara called back, still grinning. She turned to Jake. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Jake looked around at the cheering crowd, the crack in the wall, and Princess Zara's bloody nose. "Made a really bad first impression? You've won the tournament. You've defeated me in single combat. According to the rules, that means—" She paused, studying his face. "That means you're going to marry me." Jake processed this information with the same expression he'd had when trying to figure out the alien navigational system on his ship. "Marry you? Like legally? With paperwork and everything?" "With paperwork, a crown, a throne, and access to the royal treasury of the Vortanian Empire." Jake was quiet for a long moment, looking at this 7-foot alien princess who had just been defeated by his complete incompetence and was somehow smiling about it. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you actually okay with this? Because I feel like I should mention that I have absolutely no idea how to be a prince. I still don't really understand what just happened, and I'm pretty sure I'm not qualified to run anything more complicated than a coffee machine." Princess Zara looked at this small, honest human who had just accidentally accomplished what the greatest warriors in the galaxy had failed to do, and who was now worried about whether she was okay with the arrangement. "Jake Morrison," she said, "I think you're going to fit in just fine." The wedding ceremony took place 3 days later, which was apparently the minimum amount of time required to plan a royal wedding when you were the Vortanian Empire, and had both unlimited resources and a father who was desperately afraid his daughter might change her mind. Jake spent most of those 3 days in what could generously be called cultural orientation, but was really more like emergency crash course in not accidentally starting an intergalactic incident. He learned that Vortanians had 17 different words for honor, 43 ways to formally address royalty, and a complex social hierarchy that made the British royal family look like a casual book club. He also learned that his future wife collected weapons the way some people collected stamps, had personally conquered 3 star systems before her 25th birthday, and considered a quiet evening at home to involve at least some form of combat training. "So," Jake said to King Thoric during their pre-wedding father-in-law to son-in-law chat, "I feel like I should ask, is there some kind of manual for this? Like being a royal consort for dummies or something?" King Thoric, who had spent the last 3 days in a state of delirious joy at the prospect of finally getting his daughter married, patted Jake on the shoulder with enough force to dislocate a normal person's arm. "My boy, the fact that you defeated my daughter suggests you're more capable than you think." "About that," Jake said carefully, "you do realize that was basically just dumb luck, right?" "Luck," the king replied sagely, "is often indistinguishable from skill when observed from a sufficient distance." The ceremony itself was a fascinating blend of ancient Vortanian tradition and desperate improvisation. The wedding planners had never had to account for a groom who was half the bride's height, had only 2 arms, and kept asking questions like, "Is that normal?" and "Should it be glowing like that?" Princess Zara appeared in full ceremonial armor, which was apparently traditional, while Jake wore what the royal tailor had assured him was appropriate formal attire, but looked suspiciously like a military uniform designed by someone who had only heard uniforms described in passing. "You look nice," Jake whispered as they stood before the ceremonial altar, which appeared to be made of some kind of crystal that hummed ominously. "You look terrified," Zara whispered back. "I am terrified. This is all very impressive and slightly intimidating. Also, I'm pretty sure that crystal is radioactive. It's supposed to represent the eternal flame of unity." "Right, but is it supposed to be making that noise?" The High Priest of Vortania, a being who looked like someone had crossed a tree with a very dignified librarian, began the ceremony in what Jake assumed was ancient Vortanian, but sounded like someone gargling gravel in a particularly rhythmic way. "You, Jake Morrison of Earth, take Princess Zara as your battle partner, your co-ruler, and your mate for all campaigns to come." Jake looked at Zara, who was trying very hard not to smile. "I do, but I should probably mention that I don't really know what a campaign is in this context, and I'm still not entirely sure this isn't all an elaborate dream. Do you, Princess Zara of Vortania, take Jake Morrison as your battle partner, your co-ruler, and your mate for all campaigns to come?" "I do," Zara said, and then added with a grin, "and I promise to explain what campaigns are later." The High Priest declared them married, the crowd cheered, and Jake officially became Prince Consort Jake Morrison, a title that came with responsibilities he was absolutely not prepared for, and a throne he wasn't entirely sure he was tall enough to sit in properly. The honeymoon was postponed indefinitely due to what the royal calendar referred to as pressing matters of state, but which Jake quickly learned meant Princess Zara has to go resolve a border dispute with the Crystalline Confederacy, and figured she might as well bring her new husband along to see how these things work. 6 months later, Jake had adapted to royal life about as well as anyone could reasonably expect, which is to say he had learned to duck when Zara was practicing her sword work, had figured out how to use roughly 30% of the buttons in the royal bathroom, and had discovered that ruling a galactic empire involved a surprising amount of paperwork. "You know," Zara said one evening as they sat in their private quarters, reviewing what Jake had learned to call the daily reports of people trying to kill us, "I never thought I'd enjoy having a co-ruler." "I never thought I'd be one," Jake replied, looking up from a document that appeared to be written in 3 different languages, none of which he could read. "What does strategic resource allocation for the Outer Rim territories mean?" "It means someone wants more money for their military." "And what do we do about that?" "Usually I'd go there personally and negotiate. Sometimes that involves actual negotiation. Sometimes it involves me demonstrating why they don't want to make me come back." Jake considered this. "What if I came with you? I mean, I know I'm not much good in a fight, but maybe having someone who asks a lot of questions and doesn't immediately resort to violence might be useful." Zara looked at her husband, this strange little human who had accidentally defeated her, and then spent 6 months trying to figure out how to be helpful, rather than trying to prove himself worthy of his position. "You know what, Jake? I think that might actually work." And it did work. Surprisingly well, actually. Jake's complete inability to be intimidated by anything, mostly because he still didn't really understand when he was supposed to be scared, turned out to be an excellent compliment to Zara's reputation for decisive action. His tendency to ask obvious questions that everyone else was too polite or too terrified to ask had a way of cutting through political nonsense and getting to the actual problems that needed solving. The galaxy's most effective ruling couple, it turned out, consisted of a 7-foot warrior princess who could conquer star systems and a maintenance technician who still occasionally got lost in his own palace, but who had never met a problem he couldn't approach with genuine curiosity and helpful incompetence. "Hey, Zar," Jake said one morning as he struggled with what appeared to be a ceremonial breakfast utensil designed for someone with twice as many hands as he had. "Yes? I still have no idea what I'm doing." "I know," she said, smiling. "That's why it works." Jake looked around at their palace, their empire, their completely improbable life together, and shrugged. "Well, I guess if it's working, we should probably keep doing it." And they did. Though Jake never did figure out how to use the royal bathroom properly, some mysteries he decided were best left unsolved.